No man would want to stay with her. Mom's words cracked through the silence like a whip, her voice loud enough for the entire family gathered in the room to hear. She didn't flinch. She wanted it to hurt. My father leaned back in his chair and laughed, a cold, hollow sound that made my skin prickle. The laughter spread like poison through the whispers around the room. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. I felt the heat crawl up my neck, my fists clenched under the table, but my face remained still. They wanted me to break. They wanted me to cry. Instead, I looked straight at them and said calmly, clearly, "We'll see." Gasps flickered across the room. My cousin snorted. My aunt shifted uncomfortably, but I didn't give them time to respond. I stood, my heels clicking against the marble floor, each step defiant, cutting through their laughter. "Where do you think you're going?" Dad called after me, mocking. I didn't turn back. "Somewhere you'll wish I hadn't." The door slammed behind me, but their laughter still echoed in my ears. I drove through the night with my hands gripping the wheel so tightly the leather dug into my palms. My vision blurred, not from tears, but from rage burning so deep it hurt to breathe. Because they didn't know. They didn't know about him, and they had no idea what tomorrow was about to bring. Morning came, and with it, silence. My family gathered again, smug, their whispers dripping with pity and amusement. "She'll come crawling back," Mom muttered, pouring herself coffee. Dad smirked, reading the paper like nothing had happened. But when the heavy oak doors opened and my husband stepped inside, their faces drained of color. He wasn't dressed casually like the man they assumed had left me. No, he walked. In wearing a tailored suit, sharp and commanding, documents tucked under his arm. His presence filled the room, steady and unshakable. Mom's cup rattled against the saucer. Dad lowered his paper slowly, confusion shadowing his face. My husband's voice was calm, but every word carried weight. "Good morning. I believe there's something you should know. Every contract you've signed in the last 6 months, every agreement you thought was in your control, is in my name." The room fell silent. Not even a breath. I stood beside him, watching my family's faces twist in shock. The same people who had called me worthless less than 12 hours ago. Mom's lips trembled. Dad's laugh was gone. And for the first time, they understood. The girl they mocked wasn't standing alone anymore. The air in the living room was suffocating. My father's smirk faltered, his newspaper now crumpled in his fists. My mother's fingers twitched nervously on the coffee cup, eyes darting between me and the man beside me. For years they had spoken as if I were nothing but an inconvenience, a burden, a woman no one would ever stay with. And yet here stood my husband, solid, confident, holding the very foundation of their empire in his hands. Dad finally broke the silence, his voice low but shaking. "What? What are you talking about? Don't play games in my house." My husband didn't blink. He placed the thick folder of contracts onto the table, sliding them across the polished wood until they stopped right in front of my father. The sound was like a gavel slamming down. "Not a game," he said. "Every deal you signed with your partners, every merger you thought you controlled, they were funneled through holding companies I own. Which means you work for me now." Gasps erupted around the room. My aunt's hand flew to her mouth. My uncle leaned forward, squinting at the papers, as though by staring hard enough he could undo what was written there. I crossed my arms, my voice steady. "You told everyone last night that no man would want me, that I'd never have stability. But you were too blinded by your arrogance to see what was standing right in front of you. Mom slammed her cup down, porcelain shattering. This is ridiculous. Contracts, papers. You think you can just walk in here and humiliate us in front of our family? My husband tilted his head, his calmness more terrifying than anger. I don't think, he replied. I know. And humiliation? That's what you've done to your daughter, time and time again. You just never expected the tables to turn. Dad's face went red, veins straining against his neck. He stood abruptly, jabbing a finger toward me. You knew about this, didn't you? You schemed this. I met his glare, my voice cold and sharp. No, I survived you. There's a difference. The words cut deeper than I imagined. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. He looked small suddenly, no longer the towering figure who had controlled every room, every conversation, every decision. My cousin whispered under her breath. She planned this the whole time. Mom shot her a deadly look, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. The illusion of their power was cracking, and everyone could see it. Dad snatched the contracts off the table, scanning furiously through the pages. His hands trembled. These are forged. They have to be. There's no way. Check the signatures, my husband interrupted. Your signature is on every page. You signed them yourself. All legal, all binding. The room tilted for a moment, the tension so thick it felt like breathing smoke. Finally, Mom snapped, her voice shrill. You don't belong here. You, both of you. You think this makes you powerful? You're still nothing without us, without this family name, without this house. House? I cut her off, stepping forward. This house? It's not even yours anymore. The room froze, heads whipped toward me. Even my husband looked at me, surprised. I pulled a folded deed from my purse, letting it fall onto the table beside the contracts. You were too busy mocking me to notice the foreclosure notice last month. I bought it outright. This house? It belongs to me now. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in my life, they didn't have a word to throw back at me. My father's hand tightened on the contracts. His pride was slipping, his empire crumbling in front of his relatives. He had spent years teaching me to be quiet, to be obedient, to know my place. But today, my place was standing above him. Get out, he finally growled, his voice hoarse. Both of you, get out of this house. I leaned closer, my words low, each one deliberate. It's not your house. You're the guests now. The color drained from his face. Mom's hands shook, clutching the arm of her chair. Around the room, our relatives shifted uncomfortably, whispers spreading like wildfire. Some looked horrified, others amused. Maybe they had wanted to see this fall for years. Then came the breaking point. Dad slammed his fists on the table, sending the coffee-stained saucer flying to the floor. You think you've won? You think this changes anything? I'll rebuild. I'll tear you apart in court, both of you. My husband leaned forward, locking eyes with him. His voice was calm, steady, but carried a quiet threat that silenced the entire room. Try. Just try. But you won't win. Because I didn't just buy your contracts or your house. I bought your silence. You'll find out soon enough how many of your so-called friends were happy to sell you out. The room pulsed with shock. My father looked as if the walls were closing in. My mother finally stood, her mask cracking, her voice desperate now instead of cruel. You can't do this. This is our life. Our reputation. Our reputation? I shot back, stepping closer until I was eye to eye with her. What reputation? The one where you mock your own daughter in front of strangers? Where you cancel ceremonies, laugh at me, strip me of dignity, just so you can feel powerful? You lost your reputation long before today. Her lips parted, but no words came. Just silence. And in that silence, I felt it for the first time in years. Control. The whispers turned into open murmurs, tension spreading like fire across the room. My aunt leaned over to my uncle, her voice sharp but just loud enough for me to hear. "I told you this family was heading for disaster. Look at them now." Dad's head snapped toward her. "Shut your mouth," he barked, but the words only made him look weaker, more desperate. For the first time, the cracks in his authority were showing, and once they were visible, no one could unsee them. Mom turned to the relatives, voice trembling but defiant. "Don't listen to her. Don't listen to them. They're lying, manipulating you with these tricks." But the contracts on the table, the deed lying flat for everyone to see, told a story no denial could erase. My husband calmly adjusted his cufflinks, his presence commanding more respect than either of my parents had in years. "You think this is about contracts?" Dad snarled at him. "This is about family. And you—" He pointed at me, his finger shaking. "You betrayed your own blood. For him." I felt something break inside me. Not fear, not shame, something harder, stronger. "No," I said firmly. "You betrayed me. You laughed at me, humiliated me, treated me like nothing. Family doesn't do that. Family doesn't throw their own daughter to the wolves to protect their pride." Gasps echoed again, but this time they weren't from shock at me. They were at the sight of my father, once untouchable, being called out, publicly, brutally, by his own daughter. My cousin Matthew finally spoke up. He was usually the quiet one, never stepping into conflict, but now his voice cut through the tension. "Uncle, she's right. The way you treat her, it's cruel. We all see it. We just never said anything because—" He trailed off, glancing around the room. "Because we were afraid of you." The room buzzed. My father's face twisted in disbelief, then rage. "Afraid of me? You ungrateful brat. Everything you have is because of me." But the words sounded hollow. His authority was slipping like sand through his fingers. I locked eyes with Matthew, giving him the smallest nod. "Thank you," I whispered. Mom's mask shattered then. Her voice was shrill, panicked. "Stop this, all of you. You don't understand the damage they're trying to do." "If you side with her?" My husband interrupted smoothly, his tone like steel wrapped in velvet. "Siding with her doesn't mean betraying anyone. It means standing for what's right, something you've forgotten." Dad pounded the table. Again, but this time, no one jumped. The fear was gone. All that was left was pity. That's when Uncle Robert leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "I've worked with you for years," he said to Dad, "and I've seen how you treat her. Dismissing her, ridiculing her. You think power makes you untouchable. But power doesn't last when it's built on cruelty." Dad stared at him, stunned. Uncle Robert turned to me. "If this house is yours now, if those contracts are his," he gestured at my husband, "then maybe it's time the rest of us decide who we respect more." The shift was palpable. My parents weren't just losing control. They were losing the very foundation of their influence, loyalty. Mom tried one last desperate play. She stood, her hands gripping the back of the chair for support. "You'll regret this," she hissed at me. "You think you're strong now, but when people turn on you, when you're alone, you'll realize we were the only ones who truly cared." I laughed softly. Not mockingly, but with the weight of years of pain. Cared? You don't even know what that word means. Caring doesn't sound like, "No man would want her." Caring doesn't cancel ceremonies to humiliate your own daughter. Caring doesn't come wrapped in laughter at my expense. Her face crumpled, but still she didn't apologize. Couldn't. Pride was all she had left. My husband placed a hand gently on my back, grounding me, before speaking to the entire room. "Listen carefully. The era of intimidation is over. Every person here has a choice. Continue enabling two people who thrived on humiliation, or stand with honesty, dignity, and respect. One by one, heads began to nod. The weight of silence wasn't on me anymore. It was on them, my parents, the so-called pillars of this family. Dad stumbled back into his chair, his hands shaking, as he stared at the contracts again, as if the ink would magically vanish. This isn't possible, he muttered, his voice almost broken. It is, I said simply. And it's done. The final blow came when my aunt, Mom's own sister, stood up. I won't keep pretending you've hurt her for too long. If siding with her means cutting ties with you, so be it. The room erupted. Relatives argued, whispered, made choices in real time. And I stood there, calm, centered, no longer the quiet girl in the corner. For once, they had to look at me. Not as their victim, but as their equal. No, as their better. As the chaos swirled, Dad leaned forward, his voice low, almost a whisper only I could hear. You think this makes you powerful, but power fades. And when it does, you'll come crawling back. I met his stare without flinching. No, Dad, the only thing fading here is you. And with that, I turned away, leaving him drowning in the silence of his own defeat. The room had turned into a battlefield of whispers and shifting loyalties. Aunts and uncles were quietly taking sides. Cousins were no longer looking at my father with fear, and the once mighty walls of his authority had become paper thin. Dad sat hunched, the contracts limp in his trembling hands, his face pale. Mom clung to the back of her chair as if holding on would keep her world from collapsing. My husband straightened his tie, his voice cutting through the chaos with quiet authority. This isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. You mocked your daughter, stripped her of dignity in front of the people she loved, and you thought there would never be a price. Well, here it is. I stepped forward, my heels clicking, like gunshots on the hardwood floor. I let my eyes sweep the room, making sure every relative heard what I was about to say. All my life, I was told I was a burden, that no man would stay with me, that I wasn't worth respect. Last night, they tried to cancel my ceremony just to watch me squirm. I turned my gaze back to Mom and Dad. But today, you're the ones being canceled. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Mom finally broke it, her voice cracking. We're still your parents. You can't just erase us. Parents, I whispered, my throat tight. Parents build. They protect. They love. You tore me down and laughed while doing it. That's not parenting. That's cruelty. Her lips trembled, but she had nothing left to fire back. My father slammed the contracts on the table, his last act of defiance. Fine, take it all. The house, the contracts, the family's sympathy. But mark my words, you'll never escape our shadow. Everyone will remember us, not you. I leaned closer, my voice low, sharp, and final. They'll remember, yes, but not the way you think. They'll remember the day your empire fell because of your arrogance. They'll remember the daughter you underestimated, and they'll remember that you laughed until the laughter stopped. His jaw clenched, but there was no fight left in his eyes. Just emptiness. One by one, my relatives began to leave. Some hugged me on the way out, quiet words of support passing between us. Others just avoided my parents' eyes, unwilling to face their downfall head-on. The room that had once been theirs felt more like mine with every departing step. Finally, only the four of us remained. Me, my husband, my mother, and my father. I straightened, my voice calm. You wanted me gone yesterday. You laughed when you thought I had nothing. Now it's you who will leave. Mom's head shot up, her voice desperate. You can't mean... My husband interrupted, his tone final. The deed doesn't lie. You no longer live here. The color drained from their faces. Dad opened his mouth to argue, but nothing came out. For the first time, the man who had controlled every conversation had no words. I walked to the door, holding it open. "Go," I said simply. "Find a place where laughter still hides your cruelty. It won't be here." They hesitated, clinging to the last shreds of pride. But eventually, Dad stood. His shoulders slumped, his face drawn. Mom followed silently, her eyes wet but still too proud to cry in front of me. They walked past me, out the door, into a world that no longer bent to them. When the door shut behind them, the silence in the house was different. Not suffocating, freeing. My husband slipped his arm around my shoulders. "You did it," he murmured. I exhaled slowly, the weight of years lifting off me. "No," I said. "We did it." For the first time, I felt something I thought I'd never feel in this house. Peace. The laughter that once broke me was gone, and in its place there was strength. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't shouting back. It's standing tall, while the ones who mocked you crumble in silence. The dining room was thick with the smell of roasted turkey and birthday cake, but the warmth in the air was fake, stretched thin over the tension humming beneath every smile. The long mahogany table was crowded, uncles in crisp suits, aunts in glittering jewelry, cousins whispering into each other's ears. But all their laughter stopped the moment my grandfather's cane struck the hardwood floor. His voice cut like a blade through the silence. "Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation. Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. Did the account transfer go through?" he demanded, his sharp blue eyes pinned directly on me. I froze mid-breath, a fork dangling in my hand. "What transfer?" I asked, my voice shaky but clear enough to carry across the room. The air shifted. My mother's wineglass slipped in, her hand. My father cleared his throat and looked away. My older brother, Daniel, stiffened like a soldier at attention. My cousin chewed slowly, eyes darting around like a spectator waiting for the explosion. Grandpa's weathered fist slammed down on the table, rattling the plates. "Don't play dumb with me," he barked, his voice cracking with fury. "I wired a large sum, enough to cover your future, to make sure you were safe and never dependent on anyone. Where is it? Who took it?" My heart punched against my ribs. "Grandpa, I don't know what you're talking about," I stammered, my face heating with humiliation. "I never received anything." For a second, silence swallowed the room. Then came the whispers. "She's lying," my aunt whispered sharply. "Or maybe she already spent it," my uncle muttered, his lip curling. Daniel leaned back in his chair, a sly smile twitching at the corner of his mouth. I looked at him, that smug, self-satisfied expression flashing across his face. The realization struck me cold. My chest tightened with betrayal. "You knew," I hissed at him under my breath, barely able to contain the storm building inside me. Grandpa caught it, his gaze snapping to Daniel like a hawk to prey. "Did you touch that account?" he demanded, his voice booming. Daniel gave a short laugh, feigning innocence. "Why would I? I've got my own savings." But I noticed the way his fingers drummed nervously on the table, the slight tremor in his jaw. "I swear," I said firmly, sitting straighter, my voice cutting through the rising clamor. "I never received anything. If Grandpa sent money, someone else intercepted it. And I think I know who." The whole table erupted. Accusations, defenses, voices climbing over each other like wild animals fighting for dominance. Grandpa rose slowly, leaning on his cane, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "Then tomorrow morning," he growled, "we will find out exactly where that money went. And God help the one who dared to take it. My pulse thundered in my ears. Tomorrow would be war, and this time, I wasn't walking into it quietly. The morning sun burned through the curtains like an interrogation lamp. My phone buzzed nonstop, calls from my mother, texts from my aunt, even a string of missed calls from Daniel. I ignored them all. My grandfather had summoned everyone to his estate by 9 a.m. sharp, and when Grandpa gave an order, it wasn't a suggestion. I arrived early, the tires of my old Toyota crunching on the gravel driveway. The mansion loomed like a fortress, its white pillars casting long shadows. Through the massive windows, I saw silhouettes pacing and arguing already. My chest tightened, but I squared my shoulders. Last night's humiliation still burned in me like fire. I wouldn't let them twist the truth. Inside, the living room had been transformed into a courtroom. Grandpa sat at the head of a long leather couch, his cane resting against his knee, his presence commanding absolute attention. His lawyer, Mr. Whitman, a stern man with silver hair and sharp glasses, stood nearby with a thick folder in his hand. My relatives filled the room like restless spectators waiting for a verdict. "You're late," my mother snapped as I entered, her tone dripping with judgment. I ignored her, lifting my chin. "I'm right on time." Grandpa's eyes cut to me, and for a moment, his face softened, but it hardened again as his gaze swept over the rest of the family. "Mr. Whitman," he said, his voice gravelly, "show them." The lawyer cleared his throat and pulled out a stack of printed bank statements. The sound of paper hitting the coffee table was louder than a gunshot in that tense room. "On March 12th, Whitman began, adjusting his glasses, "Mr. Hale authorized a transfer of $250,000 to an account under the name of his granddaughter, Emily." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. My hands went cold. "But," Whitman continued, his tone slicing like a scalpel, "this account was not created by Emily. It was set up fraudulently. The funds were transferred to a secondary account. Almost immediately, that secondary account belongs to—" He paused, his eyes scanning the faces. "Daniel Hale." The room detonated. "What?" I shouted, my head whipping toward my brother. My heart pounded so violently I thought I might collapse. Daniel shot to his feet, his face pale but his arrogance intact. "That's ridiculous. I don't know what kind of trick this is, but I didn't steal anything." Whitman slid a document across the table. "Your signature, Mr. Hale. Clear as day. We traced the account. It's yours." Grandpa's cane slammed against the floor, the sound echoing like thunder. "You lying, thieving boy!" he roared, his voice shaking the walls. "I entrusted you all with family honor, and you rob your own sister?" Daniel's mask cracked, his jaw clenched, his eyes darting like a cornered animal. "She doesn't deserve it," he shouted, pointing at me with a trembling finger. Everything goes to her. You've spoiled her, Grandpa. What about me? I work just as hard, I'm just as worthy." My stomach twisted, rage flooding me. "You stole my future," I snapped, tears stinging my eyes. "You didn't just take money. You took my chance to breathe without debt, to have a life of my own. You betrayed me." Mother jumped in, her face red. "Stop it. Daniel is your brother, Emily. You can't tear this family apart over some wires and numbers. He was desperate. Desperate?" I cut her off, my voice trembling but sharp. "He had a choice, and he chose to stab me in the back." Grandpa slowly rose from his chair, leaning heavily on his cane, his fury contained but lethal. "No," he said, his voice like ice. "It wasn't just betrayal. It was theft, fraud, and I won't cover for him." He turned to Whitman. "File the charges." The room froze. My mother gasped, clutching her pearls. Daniel staggered back as though struck. "You'd send me to jail? Your own grandson?" Grandpa's eyes blazed. "I'd send anyone to jail who dares betray family blood." My father finally spoke, his voice low and shaking. "Dad, please, don't do this. It will destroy us." Grandpa's hand trembled as he gripped his cane tighter. "You destroyed yourselves the moment you let greed rot your hearts." Daniel lunged forward, his voice breaking with desperation. "Grandpa, please, I thought I deserved it more than she did. She's weak. She doesn't know how to handle money." His eyes darted to me, venom flaring again. She would have wasted it. The words cut deeper than the theft. My throat tightened, fury and pain boiling together. "You don't get to decide what I deserve," I said, my voice steady now, steel beneath the tremor. "You took what wasn't yours, Daniel. And the worst part? You didn't just steal money. You proved to me that family can be your sharpest knife." Silence swallowed the room. Daniel's chest rose and fell like a man drowning. Finally, Grandpa exhaled, his fury giving way to something heavier. Disappointment. "Emily," he said softly, his eyes locking on mine, "from this moment, I want you to know, you are the only one in this family I still trust." The room erupted again, relatives protesting, crying out, but his words hung like a gavel strike. My hands shook, my breath uneven, but for the first time in years I felt seen. The war had only just begun, but this round, I wasn't the victim. Daniel's face turned the color of ash. He stumbled back against the mantel, his breathing ragged as if the walls were caving in around him. My mother rushed to his side, gripping his arm like she could shield him from reality. "This isn't fair," she cried. "He's your grandson, Father. You can't throw him to the wolves." Grandpa's eyes narrowed into cold slits. "Fair?" His voice was sharp as glass. "Was it fair when he stole from Emily, lied to her face, and let the whole family accuse her? Was it fair when he used my trust as his weapon?" His cane struck the floor once, the sound final. "I will not reward betrayal with protection." The room fractured into chaos. My uncle barked something about keeping things private. My cousins whispered fiercely in corners, and my father pinched the bridge of his nose as though the shame was too heavy to bear. But my gaze never left Daniel. He stared at me with eyes full of fury and humiliation, his jaw clenched so hard the veins in his neck bulged. "You think you've won, don't you?" he spat, his voice low but venomous. "Don't look so smug. This isn't over." I straightened in my chair, every muscle trembling but my voice steady. "You're right. It's not over, but you don't get to write the ending anymore." Grandpa's lawyer leaned forward, sliding more documents across the table. "There's more," he said calmly. "The funds weren't just transferred once. They were siphoned. Smaller amounts pulled out over the course of several weeks. Luxury items purchased, trips booked, all tied to Daniel's card." A shocked murmur rippled across the room. My aunt gasped, clutching her pearl necklace. My father finally exploded, his fist slamming onto the armrest of his chair. "Daniel! For God's sake, what were you thinking?" Daniel's face twisted with defiance. "I was thinking about finally getting what I deserve." His voice cracked like a whip, loud enough to silence the room. He pointed at me, his hand shaking. "She's always been the favorite. Always. You think she struggled? You all coddled her while I had to fight for scraps of recognition. I took what should have been mine." The words hit me like blows, but something inside me hardened. For years I'd shrunk under his shadow, absorbing his cruelty in silence. But now, seeing him unravel, I realized this wasn't strength. It was desperation cloaked in arrogance. "You don't even see me, do you?" I said, my voice low, measured. "I never asked for anyone's pity. I worked, I scraped, I lived with nothing while you sneered. You had everything handed to you, Daniel. And still, it wasn't enough. So you stole." His laugh was harsh, broken. "You think you're better than me?" Grandpa slammed his cane down again, the room trembling under his fury. "Enough!" His voice thundered through the walls. "Daniel Hale, you are stripped of every benefit, every trust I ever considered for you. From this day forward, you are cut off. You will face the consequences of your greed alone." My mother gasped like she'd been stabbed. "Father, no, you can't mean that." "I mean every word," Grandpa said, his tone final. "This family has rotted from entitlement and envy. Emily is the only one who has shown honesty. The rest of you should be ashamed." The silence that followed was suffocating. My heart pounded in my chest, torn between the pain of seeing my family fractured and the strange, sharp relief of the truth finally out. Daniel's face contorted. He looked at me like a predator cornered, then back at Grandpa. "You'll regret this," he hissed. His voice was quiet now, dangerous. "Both of you." My stomach knotted, but I held his gaze. "The only thing I regret," I said firmly, "is thinking you were ever my brother." He stormed out, the door slamming so hard the walls rattled. My mother ran after him, shouting his name, but he didn't look back. The sound of her heels clattering down the marble hallway echoed like a funeral march. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Grandpa turned to me, his expression heavy but resolute. "Emily," he said, his voice quieter now, "I know this isn't easy. But sometimes truth cuts deeper than lies. Today you stood your ground. Don't ever forget this feeling." My throat tightened. "It doesn't feel like victory," I whispered. "It's not supposed to," he replied, his eyes softening. "It feels like survival. And survival, my dear, is what builds strength." As the family dispersed in bitter silence, whispers trailing behind them, I stepped out onto the porch. The cool morning air hit my face, sharp and clean, a contrast to the suffocating chaos inside. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel weak. I felt free. But deep down, I knew Daniel's words weren't empty. He wouldn't vanish quietly. The storm wasn't over. It was just circling, waiting for its chance to strike again. And when it did, I vowed, I wouldn't be the same frightened girl he'd always known. I'd be ready. The silence in the house that day didn't last long. By evening, news traveled like wildfire. A cousin texted me, "Daniel's furious. He's saying you set him up." Another message followed from an aunt. "Your mother's defending him, calling Grandpa cruel, calling you manipulative." The words stung, but I didn't flinch. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of whispers. Still, I braced myself. I knew Daniel wouldn't disappear quietly, and I was right. 2 nights later, headlights swept across my driveway. Tires screeched to a halt. I froze at the window. Heart pounding as Daniel stormed out of his car. His face was pale, twisted with rage, eyes wild like a man cornered by his own lies. He hammered at my front door, shouting loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. "Open up, Emily! You think you're better than me?" Fear prickled down my spine, but I didn't cower. I opened the door a crack, chains still latched. My voice was steady. "Go home, Daniel." "Home?" He laughed bitterly, shoving against the door. "I don't have a home anymore. Thanks to you. You ruined everything." "No, Daniel," I said firmly, my pulse thundering. "You did that all by yourself." For a moment, I saw the boy I used to know, the brother who teased me when we were kids, who once stood up for me in a schoolyard fight. But that boy was gone, swallowed whole by greed. "Grandpa won't live forever," he spat suddenly, his eyes narrowing. "When he's gone, everything will fall back to me. You'll see. You're nothing without his protection." The venom in his voice cut deep, but something inside me shifted. I realized he was wrong. I wasn't nothing. Not anymore. Unlatched the chain and stepped fully into the doorway, my voice clear and unwavering. "You're wrong, Daniel. I don't need protection. I've already survived you, and that's more powerful than any inheritance." For once, he had no Reply? His jaw tightened, his face twisted, and with a final glare, he stormed back to his car. The tires screamed against the asphalt as he sped into the night. I stood in the doorway long after the sound faded, my hands shaking but my spirit unbroken. The next morning, Grandpa came by. He didn't speak at first, just placed an envelope on my kitchen table. Inside were new documents, the deeds, the accounts, all shifted to my name. "Emily," he said quietly, his hand resting on mine. "I don't know how much longer I have, but I refuse to leave this family's legacy in the hands of liars. From this day forward, you are the heir. Not because of blood, not because of favoritism, but because you earned it, because you told the truth when it mattered." Tears blurred my vision. "Grandpa, I don't want this to be about revenge." He nodded. "Then don't make it about revenge. Make it about change. Do better than we did." His words sank deep. For the first time, I saw beyond the chaos, beyond Daniel's betrayal, beyond my parents' silence. This wasn't just about money. It was about survival, about reclaiming my voice after years of being silenced. When the rest of the family learned the truth, the backlash was loud. My mother refused to speak to me. My father called it a disgrace, and Daniel disappeared into the shadows of his own mistakes. But none of that broke me, because for once, I wasn't living in their shadows anymore. On my birthday, my life had been ripped open, secrets spilling across the table like shattered glass. But in the wreckage, I found something I'd never had before: strength. And as I locked my door that night, staring out at the quiet street, I whispered to myself the truth I finally believed. I am not their victim anymore. I am my own beginning.